The flames were already eating through the roof when Caleb Vance spotted something moving in the dirt. At first he thought it was an animal crawling away from the burning house. But as he rode closer through the smoke, his blood turned cold. It was a girl, maybe 15, dragging herself across the ground with her dress torn and her face blackened with soot. Caleb jumped off his horse and ran toward her. The heat from the fire hit him like a wall, but he kept moving. The girl was coughing violently, her small hands clawing at the earth as she tried to get further from the flames. When she saw him approaching, pure terror filled her eyes. "Stay away from me," she screamed, her voice raw and broken. "Please, just leave me alone." Caleb knelt down carefully, keeping his distance. "Easy there, miss. I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl's entire body was shaking. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her left arm hung at an odd angle. She kept looking back at the burning house as if expecting something terrible to emerge from the flames. "We need to get you away from here," Caleb said, gently reaching out his hand. "That fire's spreading fast." "No." The girl scrambled backward, panic overtaking her. "You don't understand. He's going to come back. He always comes back." Caleb's stomach twisted. Something was very wrong here. This wasn't just a house fire. The way she spoke, the fear in her voice. It was the kind of terror that came from something much worse than flames. "Who's going to come back, miss?" The girl's lips trembled as she whispered. "My father. He did this. He poured the kerosene himself and lit the match while I was sleeping inside." The words hit Caleb like a physical blow. He'd seen plenty of cruelty in his 45 years riding the frontier. But this was different. This was a man trying to murder his own child. Why would he do such a thing? Tears mixed with the soot on her face. "Because I'm a disgrace to the family name. Because I wouldn't marry the man he chose. Because I'm worthless." Caleb felt rage building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. The girl needed help, not his anger. He slowly removed his jacket and held it out to her. "None of that's true, miss. And whatever happened, you're not alone anymore." She hesitated for a moment, then reached for the jacket with her good arm. As she wrapped it around herself, she looked up at him with haunted eyes. "He said he'd finish what he started if the fire didn't kill me. Mr. Vance. Caleb Vance. And what's your name, Lila?" "Lila Prescott." She glanced nervously at the horizon. "Mr. Vance, you need to leave. When he realizes I'm still alive." But Caleb was already scanning the area, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun. Because in the distance, barely audible over the crackling flames, he could hear the sound of approaching horses. Caleb's eyes narrowed as he studied the horizon. The sound of horses was getting closer, but it was still too far to tell who was riding. Lila's whole body went rigid when she heard it too. "That's him," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. "That's my father. He's coming back to make sure I'm dead." Caleb helped Lila to her feet, supporting her weight as she favored her injured arm. "How can you be so sure?" "Because he told me he would." Her voice cracked with fresh tears. Before he lit the match, he looked me right in the eyes and said, if I somehow survived, he'd put a bullet in my head himself. Said the family honor demanded it. The casual way she spoke about her father wanting to kill her made Caleb's jaw clench. He'd dealt with plenty of hard men in his time, but a father hunting his own daughter was something else entirely. "This isn't the first time he's tried to hurt you, is it?" Lila shook her head, pulling his jacket tighter around her shoulders. "Last month he pushed me down the stairs, told everyone in town I fell. The month before that, he locked me in the cellar for 3 days without food because I spoke to a boy at church." Caleb felt sick. "Where's your mother in all this?" "Dead. Died when I was 10. Lila's voice became hollow. Sometimes I think she was the lucky one. The sound of hoofbeats was definitely closer now. Caleb could make out at least 2 horses, maybe 3. He looked around quickly, assessing their options. The house was completely engulfed now, and they were out in the open, with nowhere to hide. Lila, I need you to listen to me carefully. Can you ride? She nodded, though her face was pale with pain. With this arm, I don't know how well. But I can try. Good. I'm going to put you on my horse, and you're going to ride toward town as fast as you can. Tell Sheriff Brody what happened here. What about you? Caleb checked his revolver, making sure all 6 chambers were loaded. I'm going to have a conversation with your father. No. Lila grabbed his arm with her good hand. You don't understand what kind of man he is. He's not just cruel, he's completely insane. Last year he beat a ranch hand nearly to death because the man looked at me wrong. He'll kill you without thinking twice about it. Maybe. But I can't just let him ride up here and finish what he started. Lila's eyes filled with desperate tears. Please, Mr. Vance, just take me away from here. We can both ride out together. You don't owe me anything. Caleb looked down at this broken girl who was begging him to save himself instead of protecting her. It reminded him of someone else long ago, someone he'd failed to protect when it mattered most. I'm not running, Lila. And neither are you. Not anymore. The hoofbeats were close enough now that they could hear voices carrying on the wind, angry voices, male voices planning violence. Besides, Caleb said, helping Lila toward his horse, a man who'd burn his own daughter alive isn't the kind of man who stops hunting just because his prey got away once. Lila's face went white as she realized the truth in his words. He'll never stop, will he? Even if I run to the ends of the earth, he'll keep coming. Not if I have anything to say about it. But as Caleb lifted Lila onto his horse, they both heard something that made their blood freeze. It wasn't just her father's voice echoing across the prairie. There were at least 3 men with him, and they were close enough now that their words were becoming clear. Spread out and search everywhere. If that little witch is still breathing, I want her found. The voice that carried across the prairie made Lila's entire body start trembling again. Caleb had heard plenty of dangerous men in his time, but there was something different about this one, something cold and calculated that went beyond normal anger. That's him, Lila whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped the saddle horn. That's my father. Caleb positioned himself between Lila and the approaching riders, his hand resting on his gun. Through the smoke and heat waves from the burning house, he could make out 4 silhouettes on horseback, moving methodically across the landscape like hunters tracking wounded prey. Lila, I need to know something. Has he done this before? Tried to kill you like this? She nodded, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. Not fire, but other ways. 2 years ago, he pushed me off the barn roof and told everyone I fell while cleaning gutters. Last winter, he locked me outside during a blizzard for an entire night. Said if I froze to death, it would teach me a lesson about obedience. Caleb's stomach churned. This wasn't just an angry father having a bad moment. This was systematic, calculated abuse that had been building for years. Why tonight? What changed, I told him. I wouldn't marry Judge Silas Croft. Lila's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Edgar's 63 years old and already buried 2 wives. But his ranch borders ours, and father wants the land. When I refused, he said I was defying God's will and the family honor. So he decided to kill you. He said a dead daughter was better than a disobedient one. That at least a dead daughter couldn't bring more shame to the Prescott name. The riders were close enough now that Caleb could see them clearly. The man in front was tall and lean, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to hold no warmth at all. Even from a distance, Caleb could see the family resemblance between him and Lila. The other three men looked like hired guns, the kind of rough characters who'd do anything for the right price. Mr. Vance, Lila said urgently, "Those men with him aren't from around here. Father's been hiring drifters and outlaws for months now. Says he needs extra protection for the ranch. But I think he's been planning this for a long time." Caleb studied the approaching group more carefully. The three men flanking Lila's father all wore their guns low and ready. These weren't ranch hands or neighbors helping with a family emergency. These were killers. How many people know what really happened here tonight? Nobody. Father sent all our regular ranch hands away yesterday. Said he was giving them time off. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. And with this wind, they probably think the smoke is just from a controlled burn. Caleb realized with growing dread that this whole thing had been planned out perfectly. No witnesses, no help coming, and hired guns to make sure the job got finished properly. "Lila, there's something else you need to tell me. What's your father's name?" "Alistair Prescott. But most people call him Colonel Prescott. He was in the war." Caleb's blood went cold. He'd heard that name before. Whispered in saloons and around campfires. Colonel Alistair Prescott wasn't just any rancher. He was known throughout the territory as a man who solved his problems with violence and never left loose ends. And right now, Lila was the biggest loose end of his life. Colonel Alistair Prescott reined in his horse about 50 yards away, close enough for Caleb to see the cold calculation in his eyes. The three hired guns spread out in a semicircle, effectively cutting off any escape routes. This was a man who approached killing his own daughter like a military operation. Lila Prescott's voice boomed across the space between them. "I see you found yourself a champion. How touching." Caleb stepped forward, keeping Lila behind him. "Colonel Prescott, I presume? Seems like you've got some explaining to do about this fire." Prescott laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Explaining? To you, I don't believe we've been introduced, stranger. But then again, introductions won't be necessary, since you'll be dead in a few minutes. The name's Caleb Vance, and I'm not going anywhere until I know this girl is safe." Safe? Prescott's eyes narrowed. "That girl is my property, Vance. My blood, my responsibility, and my burden to deal with. You have no business interfering in family matters." Lila's voice came out as a broken whisper from behind Caleb. "Property, is that all I've ever been to you? You've been nothing but trouble since the day you were born." Prescott spat. "Your mother died bringing you into this world, and you've been a curse on this family ever since. Tonight I finally do what I should have done 15 years ago." Caleb had seen plenty of evil in his time, but the casual way this man talked about murdering his own child made his trigger finger itch. "You're talking about killing a 15-year-old girl because she won't marry some old man." "I'm talking about preserving family honor," Prescott replied. "Something a drifter like you wouldn't understand. The Prescott name means something in this territory. I won't have it dragged through the mud by a disobedient daughter who thinks she can make her own choices." One of the hired guns, a scarred man with dead eyes, leaned forward in his saddle. "Colonel, we doing this, or not, sun's getting low, and I want to be paid, and gone, before anyone comes looking." Prescott raised his hand. "Patience, Reno. I want to make something clear to Mr. Vance here before we proceed. Lila, tell him what happened to the last man who tried to help you." Lila's voice was barely audible. "Father, please don't." "Tell him about Deputy Hayes." Caleb felt Lila stiffen behind him. "What about Deputy Hayes? He came to the ranch last month when I showed up to church with a black eye. Asked too many questions about how I got hurt." Lila's voice broke completely. "They found him in the river 3 days later. Father said he must have fallen off his horse while drinking, but you know better, Prescott finished. Just like Mr. Vance here is about to learn that some lessons only get taught once. Caleb's mind raced. This wasn't just about Lila anymore. Prescott had already killed at least one man to keep his secrets, and he was clearly prepared to kill again. The 3 hired guns were professionals, probably faster with their guns than Caleb was. But running meant leaving Lila to die, and standing meant fighting impossible odds. Here's what's going to happen, Vance Prescott continued. You're going to walk away right now, get on your horse, and forget you ever saw any of this. In exchange, I'll make your death quick instead of slow. And if I refuse? Prescott's smile was colder than winter wind. Then I'll let Reno and his friends have some fun with you before they put you down. But either way, you're not leaving here alive. You've seen too much, and you know too much. Caleb realized with crystal clarity that this had been Prescott's plan all along. Kill Lila, kill any witnesses, and make it all disappear. The man wasn't just insane. He was methodical about his insanity. But as Caleb prepared to make his move, Prescott said something that stopped his blood cold. And Vance. Lila failed to mention that Reno here is the fastest gun in 3 territories. He's killed 17 men in fair fights, and twice that many in unfair ones. Reno's hand drifted toward his holster, and his dead eyes fixed on Caleb with the patience of a predator. Caleb stared at Reno's hand, hovering over his gun, and felt time slow down. 17 men in fair fights. The odds weren't just bad. They were impossible. But as he looked at Lila's terrified face behind him, Caleb realized something that changed everything. He wasn't fighting for himself anymore. You know what Colonel Caleb said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I've got a counter-proposal. Prescott raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Let the girl go, let her ride away, and I'll stay here and face Reno in a fair fight, winner takes all. Lila grabbed Caleb's arm. No, you can't do this. You don't understand what kind of man Reno is. But Caleb was studying Reno's eyes, looking for any weakness he could exploit. The gunfighter was good, that was obvious from his stance and the way he wore his gun. But there was something else there, arrogance. Reno was so confident in his abilities that he wasn't taking Caleb seriously. Prescott laughed. That's almost noble, Vance, but you're missing the point. This isn't about fairness or honor. This is about eliminating problems. Lila dies tonight regardless of what happens to you. Then why not make it interesting? Caleb pressed. If I win, Lila goes free. If Reno wins, you get what you want anyway. What do you have to lose? Nothing, Prescott admitted, because Reno doesn't lose. Caleb could feel Lila trembling behind him, but he also sensed something else. She was trying to tell him something without speaking, using pressure on his arm. Short squeeze, long squeeze, short squeeze. She was trying to warn him about something, but he couldn't figure out what. All right, Vance, Prescott said. I'll indulge this foolishness. Reno, show this cowboy why they call you the fastest gun in 3 territories. Reno dismounted slowly, his movements fluid and practiced. As he walked forward, Caleb noticed something that made his stomach sink. The man wasn't just fast, he was ambidextrous. He wore guns on both hips, and both hands moved with equal precision. You ever killed a man before, Cowboy? Reno asked, his voice like gravel. A few. Well, you're about to join them. Caleb positioned himself for the draw, his mind racing through every gunfight technique he'd learned in 25 years of frontier living. But as he prepared to make his move, Lila suddenly stepped out from behind him. Wait, she called out. Before you kill each other, there's something you all need to know. Prescott's face darkened. Lila, get back behind Vance right now. No, Father. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of running. and I'm tired of watching good people die because of your madness." She turned to face Reno directly, her voice gaining strength despite her injuries. "Mr. Reno, my father hasn't told you the whole truth about why you're here." Reno's hand paused over his gun. "What are you talking about, girl? Tell him about the gold father. Tell him about the real reason you want me dead." Prescott's face went white with rage, but something else flickered in his eyes, fear. "Lila, you don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. For the first time in my life, I'm telling the truth." And with that, she revealed the secret that would change everything. "Before my mother died," Lila continued, her voice growing stronger, "she told me where she hid the gold from Father's war crimes. $20,000 worth of gold coins stolen from Union supply wagons during the war." Reno's gun hand froze completely. $20,000 was more money than most men saw in a lifetime. Prescott's face went from white to purple with rage. "Lila, you little fool. You have no idea what you've just done." But Lila wasn't finished. She hid it because she knew what kind of man Father really was. A murderer and a thief who used the war as an excuse to get rich. "The gold is buried under the old oak tree behind our house. The one that burned down tonight." Caleb saw the exact moment when greed overtook loyalty in Reno's eyes. The gunfighter's gaze shifted from Caleb to Prescott, and his whole stance changed. $20,000, you say?" Reno asked slowly. "And where exactly did you say this gold was buried?" Reno Prescott warned, his voice deadly quiet. "Remember who's paying you." "You're paying me $50 to kill a girl and a cowboy," Reno replied. "But she's talking about $20,000 in gold. My arithmetic says that's a much better deal." The other two hired guns exchanged glances, clearly thinking the same thing. Caleb realized that Lila had just turned Prescott's own men against him with one revelation, but the situation was still far from safe. "The problem is," Lila continued, "Father's the only one who knows the exact spot. Mother gave me the general location, but she died before she could tell me the precise place. So you need him alive if you want that gold." Prescott's hand moved toward his gun. "You think you're clever, girl? All you've done is sign your death warrant, and Vance's too. Because now I have to kill all of you to keep that gold secret." But Reno was already moving, drawing his gun with lightning speed. "Not on Caleb, but on Prescott." "I don't think so, Colonel. See, I've got a new plan. We keep you alive long enough to dig up that gold, then we split it 4 ways. 4 ways, one of the other gunmen asked. "Me, you two, and the girl. The cowboy and the colonel don't make it out of this." Caleb felt the situation spiraling completely out of control. Reno had turned on Prescott, but that didn't make him an ally. If anything, it made him more dangerous because now he had real motivation to keep fighting. "There's just one problem with your plan," Reno Caleb said quietly. "Yeah, what's that?" "You're still planning to kill an innocent girl, and I can't let that happen." Reno's laugh was cold as winter wind. "You're going to stop me, cowboy, even with the colonel's gun pointed at your back." Caleb realized with horror that Prescott had used the distraction to draw his own weapon and was now aiming it directly at Caleb's spine. He was caught between 2 guns, with no way out. "Here's what's going to happen," Reno announced. "Vance, you're going to drop your gun right now or the colonel puts a bullet in your back. Then we're all going to take a little ride to dig up some gold." Caleb's mind raced through his options, but they all led to the same conclusion. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. But as he started to reach for his gun to drop it, Lila made a move that nobody expected. She grabbed the reins of Caleb's horse and vaulted into the saddle despite her injured arm. "If you want that gold," she shouted, "you'll have to catch me first." And with that, she spurred the horse into a full gallop directly toward the burning house. Lila's desperate gamble worked exactly as she'd planned. The moment she spurred Caleb's horse toward the flames, every gun turned away from him and toward her. Reno Prescott and the other two gunmen all scrambled to mount their horses and give chase, shouting about the gold location dying with her. But Caleb had been ready for this moment. The second their attention shifted, he drew his gun and put a bullet through Reno's shoulder, spinning the legendary gunfighter off his horse and into the dirt. The man might have been fast, but he'd made the mistake of underestimating a cornered cowboy with nothing left to lose. Prescott wheeled his horse around, his face twisted with rage. "You fool. She'll die in those flames, and the gold location dies with her." "Maybe," Caleb replied, keeping his gun trained on the colonel. "But at least she'll die free instead of murdered by her own father." The other two hired guns hesitated, caught between their fear of Prescott and their greed for the gold. That hesitation cost them everything. Caleb put bullets in both their shoulders before they could decide which side to choose, sending them tumbling from their saddles. But Lila hadn't ridden into the flames to die. She'd ridden around the back of the burning house where the fire hadn't spread as heavily. And now she emerged from the smoke on the far side, still in the saddle, but barely conscious from the heat and smoke inhalation. Prescott saw her first and spurred his horse toward her, his gun raised. "If I can't have that gold, nobody can. Starting with you." Caleb had one shot left in his revolver, and Prescott was too far away for a sure kill. But sometimes in life, you have to take the shot anyway and trust that justice will guide your hand. The bullet caught Colonel Alistair Prescott's center mass, knocking him backward off his horse. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up. The man who terrorized his own daughter for 15 years was finally finished. Caleb rode quickly to Lila, who was slumping forward in the saddle. Her face was pale from smoke inhalation, but she was alive. More importantly, she was free. The gold, she whispered as he helped her down from the horse. "It's real. Mother really did hide it." "What do you want to do about it?" Lila looked back at the burning house, then at her father's body lying motionless in the dirt. "I want to give it to the church in town. Mother always said stolen money brought nothing but suffering. Maybe it can do some good for once." Caleb smiled. After everything she'd been through, Lila's first thought was about helping others. That told him everything he needed to know about what kind of person she really was. As they rode toward town together, Lila asked quietly, "Mr. Vance, what happens to me now? I don't have any family left, and I don't have anywhere to go." Caleb had been thinking about that same question. His ranch was small, but it was honest work and a peaceful life. And maybe after years of living alone, it was time to have some family around again. "Well, Lila, I've got a ranch that could use some help. And I could use some company. If you're interested in hard work and a fresh start, you're welcome to stay as long as you want." For the first time since he'd found her crawling from the flames, Lila smiled. It was a small smile, fragile and uncertain, but it was real. And sometimes that's how healing begins, with one person willing to offer safety to another and the courage to accept it. The Prescott Ranch burned to the ground that night, taking with it 15 years of fear and suffering. But from those ashes, two people found something worth saving each other.